Tech News Weekly is sponsored by Hover.com. Domain names made simple. Go to gfq.hover.com and get 10% off your entire purchase. And by Stitcher Radio. Listen on the go via the Stitcher mobile app. For more information, go to stitcher.com/GFQ.
Starting Tech News Weekly in 3, 2, 1.
Everybody, welcome to Tech News Weekly. We are wrapping up everything that happened in technology this week. Everything. Now, we're not going to leave anything out. We're talking about everything, and it was a busy week, very busy week this week. And to talk about all of the top tech news, we have Eric Lanigan, as we do every other week. How you doing, Eric?
I'm good. Yes, we're covering every single bit of tech news. And to start, here is the list of CD-ROM drives that have received firmware updates this week. No.
The LG 24X 530 got a firmware update this week.
And the 530Z got a beta version.
Wow. Any updates from you, Suncast?
No, I don't follow updates.
No firmware updates for you?
No.
You're not big into technology, are you?
No. I don't even know why I'm here.
And of course, we have Suncast with us. How you doing, John?
Hey, what's up?
Good. Nothing much. I'm actually pretty tired today. I went to a Windows 8 party last night. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley had a gathering in New York City. They were at all the Microsoft events, and around 6 o'clock, we got together with a bunch of viewers of my show, of Hit Paul's show, Mary Jo's fans, their readers of their blog and their website. And I have to tell you, I am so tired. It was so much fun. I got pretty drunk. And
as usual.
And I was so surprised by how many people watched the show and how many people watched Tech News Weekly. I can't begin to tell you how many people came up to me and they said, "Tell Eric I say hello. I'm a big fan of his. And tell John I love his laugh."
That's the only thing I'm ever remembered for.
It's your laugh. Well, it's better than...
Nobody cares about my opinions. Nobody cares about what I do here. They just care about my laugh.
Well, it could be a lot worse. You know what everybody said to me? They came up to me and
I love your LCD monitors.
I love your LCD monitors. They came up and really seriously, they go, "I was really hoping to see you really drunk, but I'm really surprised you're still sober." And I asked him, I'm like, "Why?" And he goes, "Well, you always talk about how much you drink, and I thought that you'd be this giant lush." I'm like, "Yeah, I am at home, though. I'm in public now. I can't show you all my vices."
You didn't get drunk off the majesty and splendor that is Windows 8?
Oh, there was so much majesty and just amazement there. I actually got a chance to play around with the Surface. And Ooh. I have to tell you, this is not a tablet. This is a hybrid device. One thing that I was...
Because it has a keyboard that attaches to it, it makes that more than just a tablet.
Yeah, it does. And I'll tell you, I was playing around with, because Paul had a loaner, and I was playing around with it for a little bit. I was really surprised how often I was in classic mode, the desktop Windows that we know. And it was a little alarming to me that I was in desktop mode more than I would have been in Metro.
And this is on an ARM-only processor,
This
right?
is in an ARM processor, yeah. And I found that bizarre, and I want to play around with it some more. I'm going to get one this week so I could, assess it a little further. But from the 20 minutes that I had with it, I was 70% in desktop mode.
Wow.
Oh, and how did that work with the finger touch?
Is
it even workable?
It is workable. I mean, it's as workable. It's better than the Windows 7 experience, but it's not, oh my God, this is great.
How much of that, though, was just because that's what you're used to working with, is because you're used to desktop mode and you don't really know what to do with Metro yet?
Well, I opened up Word, for example. You were in there.
Yeah.
So when you're using Word, you're in desktop mode, obviously, and you still have to touch, or you still have to point at everything on that screen.
I just love that's what you do. That's what a Windows 8 party is fun
Yeah.
for. I opened up Word.
Word and Excel. But as far as the hardware goes, it is a really well-crafted device. I mean, it's phenomenal. The keyboard is really good. It feels solid. It's a great feeling device. I just didn't have a lot. I mean, again, my review. This is not an official review. It wasn't connected to any
First
Wi-Fi
impression.
device. It wasn't connected to Wi-Fi, so I couldn't play around with it that much. But
Oh, that's fishy.
it was. I was in desktop mode, and in the experience of touching desktop mode is not great.
Does it leave that little star cursor behind like Windows 7 does?
Yes, it does.
Oh man.
It does, and I'm sure you could turn it off, but that was bizarre. John, I don't know if you know what he means by that.
No.
When every time you touch it in desktop mode, it leaves a little shadow of what you did, and it fades away. So it's like a little trail of what you're doing and touching.
But that's interesting that you really like the build quality, because I know they have that weird, that's like a magnesium ion case.
Yeah,
or
it's
something.
phenomenal. It's great.
So it sounds like because I'm sure we'll get to this eventually, but like the Apple stuff, Phil Schiller was really about, oh, no one has build quality like Apple. They're plastic, but it sounds like Microsoft actually might in this case.
I think the build quality is actually better than the iPad.
Wow.
It feels.
I would certainly hope so for the price.
Yeah, I mean, the build quality is much better than the iPad, in my opinion. I think they did a splendid job with this. You could tell that they looked at every tiny detail.
Hardware-wise, you mean.
Hardware-wise. I'm just concerned on touching desktop.
Did they give you any native software to play with? Native for the the Metro style?
You know what it was? It was disconnected, and I wasn't using it connected, so I'm going to get one this week, so then I'll have more of a chance. But my first impression of using this, if I have to, like, one example is control panel still exists, because not every setting is in, you know how they have that, like, new control panel?
Oh, yeah.
It's like, I forgot what they're calling. It's like their settings menu. It's not everything that's in control panel, so if you need to do something, you still need to go to control panel. So now you're touching in desktop mode. It's a Frankenstein of an operating system. And it's not necessarily, I don't think that's an awful thing. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think they had to do it. But if this is and I don't want to bash it, because I really think it's a great direction, but this is a version 1. And this is, you have to look at it as, this is a reboot. This is a fresh start. They kept desktop mode because they still haven't figured out how we're going to multitask in Metro.
Right.
That's why I almost feel like.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I almost feel like it was too premature to call it Windows 8 and to say that this is a releasable product. I mean, for enthusiasts, it's going to be really cool, and for developers, it's important. You have to get a first version out there for people to start adopting and playing with. But for someone who's doing like a big corporate enterprise rollout of or a big hardware replacement, imagine the training and everything that has to go into teaching the users how to use this new, like you said, like this Frankenstein hybrid system, which almost certainly is going to be modified by the time Windows 9 comes out, and you'll have to relearn where the things are and what they look like, and they're going to change a lot probably before the next version.
Well, I'm not saying I have any sources or anything like this, but my personal opinion is that they're going to go to a yearly update. You're not going to see these 3-year gaps anymore.
You're almost inevitable in having to do that, because in order for it to change quickly enough, you have to update it at least every year.
You have to. No, they're going to have to. And this
because
is the first.
The way it is now is that it's still in such an unrefined state that you're going to need to update this within a year.
You know what? It's really, and this is an awful comparison to make, but I'm going to make it anyway. When Android, prior to, I guess, Jelly Bean, my biggest complaint was that it felt incomplete. It wasn't streamlined. So you would have certain aspects of Android that looked beautiful and they were really well done, and then you would go to like another portion of Android and it just looked incomplete. It wasn't consistent. I feel that's the big problem with it right now. That once you leave Metro, it feels incomplete, and I think the reason
it's
why,
a different environment.
In my opinion,
part of the problem is that you're still trying to do two different things where it doesn't necessarily work quite yet in that manner.
Well,
where you're trying to have a mobile operating system that works on these smaller devices such as tablets and ultrabooks, but at the same time, you're also trying to do these things that are for a desktop, and these two worlds just don't necessarily work together yet. You can't really use desktop mode on a tablet yet. It just doesn't, unless you add those touch optimizations and the touch input for those things. It just is never going to work on a tablet where you don't have a keyboard.
Now let me say this, John.
If you have a desktop, it's having those touch optimizations is a detriment to being on a desktop. You'd rather have something that's what we have today, most likely.
Now, let me say this, John, because your big concern was you don't want to be in Metro and you feel that you want to be in desktop more. I actually think your experience, if you use this a little bit more, you're going to realize that you're actually not in Metro as much as you thought you would be. They're really pushing Metro, but I don't feel that I'm ever going to be in Metro.
That's interesting.
I feel that their whole idea where they're pushing Metro, but the user experience is going to be predominantly desktop.
And you're saying this even for the ARM-only ones?
Even for the ARM-only ones, and I think that's a huge mistake for them because it's confusing. It's going to confuse a consumer even more because now you have desktop, but guess what? You can't install any x86 applications.
Now, I guess I'm a little confused because from the perspective of a developer who's developing a tablet app for the tablets that only have the ARM CPUs, why would that developer develop for the desktop environment? Or would that be more of a port?
Well, you can't. There's no ARM development for desktop. You can't develop an ARM-based application for desktop right now. Or I guess you can, but nobody has done it.
Like I'm just confused because when you say you're going to spend more time there, do you mean like to get to to working with your files in the Windows Explorer?
File management, file management. You have the stuff you have a desktop version of Internet Explorer. You have all your Office files. You have all the Microsoft-based applications. It's still in there. It's in desktop mode, but you can't download a version of Skype for x86. That's where the confusion is going to be because how do you tell someone that it's limited when it looks the same? I
definitely see where you're coming from and how that can be very confusing. I think this whole process of transitioning to Windows 8 is very confusing because of just how many new devices are out there right now. And just the overall transition period of Windows 8 is just... This is not going to be an easy process, and I definitely recognize that. But at the same time, it's almost overwhelming, the transition process that we're making here.
But let me tell you something. I saw firsthand. So I went to the party, and a lot of people were excited, and it was great, and a lot of brilliant people were there. A lot of bloggers. Ed Bott was there. Tom Warren was there. And there was a lot of interesting conversations about, real use of this device. So they went to the Times Square pop-up store for the official launch of the device. I actually didn't go with them. I stayed back with a friend and I had a drink. But when I was walking back, I actually, went around. I took a peek of the store. This was Windows 95 hysteria. I mean, even more than that. I mean, when we were talking about people running in the store, that picture where the guy's holding up a copy of Windows 95, it was like that in that store. I mean, it was insanity. I just don't understand
that.
It was insanity. Really don't. People are excited about this operating system and all the devices that are coming along, and that's phenomenal. I'm really happy for that because that's what this market needs. And I hope people buy it, and I hope it's successful, and I hope they refine it even more. I personally... and I'm a fan of Microsoft. I don't have a use for Windows 8 right now, and I'm not upgrading for the first time in 15 years. I'm not going to upgrade any of my machines. I will buy a machine with Windows 8, obviously, but I'm not in any urgency to upgrade.
I don't think it makes any sense whatsoever if you have an existing desktop to put Windows 8 on it. I think you're better off waiting for an actual device that's built for Windows 8 to come out.
Now, one other problem, guys, that they're going to face is a lot of Windows 8 is touch friendly, right? It's all about, touching it and swiping it or having a trackpad that has, 10-point touch, whatever. multi-touch
input.
And it has to be a pretty decent experience with the trackpad. I mean, I don't know if you guys would agree or not, but if my trackpad is lousy on my laptop, I'm going to have a really bad experience with Windows 8. I don't know if you guys agree or not.
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
And I agree with both you guys that it makes it the upgrade proposition for a desktop customer or a laptop customer is it's not very strong. I think this is definitely an upgrade where it's better to buy a new, probably a tablet, something with a touch screen, because the touch interface is what gets the biggest upgrade by Windows 8.
So Microsoft with Windows 8 has for the OEMs, a list of specs that they have to follow. One of them is, I think, 5 to 10 multi-touch inputs on their devices for Windows 8 devices. What about, there's two scenarios. What about all the Windows 7 machines that are in Best Buy and Micro Center and all these stores that are being upgraded to Windows 8? And what about the lower end of the PC market, those $299, $399 laptops that they're putting out? The specs aren't that great, and the hardware is not great either. What is your experience going to be? Most people aren't going and buying $1,000 laptops. They're buying $299, $399, $499, even $599. I have a $499 laptop here, and I have a $599 laptop behind me. I've installed Windows 8 on both of them, and the user experience is atrocious because the trackpad is awful on this device. So
CNET had a article this week, and they were talking about several of the new Windows 8 devices that are out there, or devices that are made with Windows 8 in mind. And they only covered maybe one actual laptop, where everything else was some sort of hybrid or a tablet. And this laptop, I think it was from Dell or Lenovo, got the lowest score out of all the Windows 8 devices that they tried.
Say that again? I'm sorry.
They took several reviews that they have done of Windows 8 devices that are coming out.
Yeah.
And one of them was just basically a laptop like what you see today, and the rest were basically hybrid devices where it swiveled around or did something where it kind of became a tablet, or it could be a laptop. And the laptop, the actual laptop that they have reviewed, they say gets their lowest score versus all the other devices that they tried that have some sort of hybrid motion to it, where you can flip it around into some sort of a tablet-like device.
Yeah, sure, and that's going to be true. And I think the fact is, regardless of how successful in our eyes this device is, it is going to change the PC market. We are no longer going to have these standard laptops. I think the next 5 years...
Well, I don't think Windows 8 works on any sort of practical, traditional laptop or desktop that we have or know about today.
Well, I think it will work
for them.
You know where it will work, and I'm dying to try this. I'm dying to install it on my MacBook Pro, because the MacBook Pro has a phenomenal trackpad. And I think gesturing could, if you have decent gesturing on this device, I think it'll work then. But my user experience on these lower-end laptops, awful. And I think that's a bad sign. How does Microsoft convince the OEMs to spend a little bit more money and put a decent trackpad in there?
Now, just imagine when those OEMs making the bad trackpads start adding bad touchscreens to it.
That was my next point.
Trying to keep the price the same, but then adding a whole layer of touch onto the screen. And, I imagine that's going to be even worse.
Yeah, I mean, the issue is our experience is going to be different going from device to device. And it's always like that. And the biggest complaint is, oh, the keyboard is not as good as my Acer, or oh, the display's not as nice, or oh, it's not as fast. But you never turn around and say, oh, Windows is really bad on this device. This is going to be the first time that Microsoft really has to be aggressive with the OEMs and try to give them some sort of incentive to spend a little bit more money and put good devices. Asus, I believe it was Asus or Acer, John. I'm not too sure. I think they're releasing a $499 touchscreen Ultrabook. It's a slim. It's a very pretty looking device, and it's touchscreen. That's phenomenal. But how good of a touchscreen are they putting in this thing for $499? Yeah.
And maybe that's exactly why we're seeing Microsoft making their own hardware and trying to have the best build quality and the best, Apple competitive specs in it, and the best touch interfaces and so forth. That's one way to put pressure on the rest of the competition to say, hey, step up your game, because if you don't, we will.
Yeah, and I think Microsoft currently has a signature series for PC laptops and PC, desktops. So it's the best of the best and without all the junk. So they remove all the junk, but there's a premium on top of that. I think that's their way of saying, hey, listen, guys, don't put bloatware on these things. Put decent hardware. Make sure it works, or else, we may want to make our own. I really think they're going to enter the hardware market. I think within the next 5 years, they're going to enter hardware as far as desktops and PCs and laptops.
And they probably need to. If you look at how Google has done it, how Amazon has done it, how Apple has done it, the future is clearly in the ecosystem that includes the hardware, but then is made up as a sort of a razor and razor blade purchase model, where then they make a cut on every app and other media sold through their store. And I think they don't want to be left in the dust when everyone else figures out that new model.
And I think
part of it too is the fact just where we are in this economy is that some companies are still struggling a little bit, and they're not willing to I don't think that they're necessarily willing to take the risk of making these ultra high end hardware devices. Whereas a company such as Microsoft, because they're such a large company, could take a bigger hit and do something like that.
I've got a question for you, Andrew, because you got to play with one of these hands-on. Did you get any sense, or did anyone tell you who's building them? Is it Microsoft? Like, did they contract with people like Foxconn, and this is really their own brand and their own people that they've contracted, or is it made by a white label provider like an Asus Tech, and they just put their Microsoft logo on it?
I asked that question to a couple people, and nobody really has an answer. My gut feeling is that they contracted. It's just an OEM that did it for them.
Like Apple's model, saying.
Yeah, I think I don't know why, for whatever reason, but I think Asus built it for them.
Okay. So you're saying it is more like the white label, and they just stuck Microsoft on it.
I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong.
So I guess the easiest way to ask it is it the Apple model or the Google model?
Yeah, I don't.
It's like how Google does the Nexus stuff.
I still don't think they know what they're going to do.
Microsoft did come out and say that they are interested in doing more hardware.
And they should. That's how they're going to save it.
I mean, with what they've done with Windows 8, it's like I said, you almost need to stop what you're doing and create devices that are tailored for Windows 8, because what's out now really is not going to work well with Windows 8, in my opinion. You have to create a device and hardware specifically made for Windows 8 for it to be usable, in my opinion.
And they do have a strong hardware brand. They always have. I mean, even their simple things like mice and keyboard have always been, relatively at the top. They get good reviews. And of course, people love the Xbox and the Xbox related hardware. So it's one area where they haven't really explored except for the ill-fated Zune. But, it's something where the brand still matters, and it seems like they are competent at building products.
And Zune was a pretty well-built device, too.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, they built a pretty decent device with that. The Zune Touch was a great-looking device. Unfortunately, nobody wanted it. You can't compete with the iPod. I mean, that's the fact. Apple also, it's a kind of, so I don't know. My personal opinion, I only had a couple minutes with this thing. I think the build quality is phenomenal. I think the operating system is like a Frankenstein of our operating system right now. And it's very confusing to someone, because I was really surprised that I think a lot of people don't even think desktop mode is on RT. And for a long time, a lot of people came and said, I had no idea you had desktop access. And the reason why they did that is because they have not incorporated all the user settings that you have in Windows in Metro. They haven't moved everything over.
I think it's hilarious that people still call it Metro.
I mean, there's no name. Oh, I got, I don't know.
Modern UI.
Well, no. The interface formerly known as Metro.
Yeah. Did you hear that one? Actually, that was there's 5 names for it, allegedly, inside of Microsoft.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's 5 names, and that's one of them. So it was a lot of fun. It was great talking to some of these people. It brought a lot of insight into what's happening. A lot of smart people there, and it was interesting to see what people's concerns were. Just regular users of it. So that was my experience of the Microsoft Windows 8 launch event that was held in Manhattan yesterday in New York City. A lot of fun. And I don't know. We'll see what happens in the coming weeks, because it's going to be crazy out there. To kind of move on to the other side, Apple had a huge announcement this week. Very unexpected according to some people, they had a big announcement about a month and a half ago, and this seemed to be a much larger announcement than the iPhone 5 announcement. I don't know. You guys agree with me on that?
It had more to it.
Much
there
more
were
to
more
it.
products announced.
A lot more products.
A lot more
And it
products.
was a much better timed and paced keynote.
Yeah, much. Yeah, I mean, it almost feels like the prior keynote, they left certain things out intentionally, and they needed filler, so they spent 45 minutes on iTunes 11.
Yeah,
and they actually went over the time. I noticed when I downloaded and watched the the download of that, it was like over 2 hours long.
Oh, it
and
was way
usually
too long.
the Apple keynotes are like capped at 90 minutes.
And that's what they did. I think it was an hour 15 this one today, this week's. So to kind of run down what they announced a 13-inch MacBook Pro with Retina. I welcome this. 2560 by 1600 screen resolution. I believe it's offering a PPI of 232, which is larger than the larger 15-inch, which is 226. 2 Thunderbolt ports, 2 USB 3.0, 1 HDMI. The base model will run $1,700, and that comes with a 2.5 gigahertz i5, 8 gigs of RAM, and 128 gigs of flash memory, which is SSD. Pretty expensive, not cheap. Not cheap at all.
Apple's never been cheap, though.
No, not cheap at all. They also introduced the next generation of iMacs. Beautiful design. I have to tell you, this is a pretty looking device. 21-inch and 27-inch devices on the market. Really nice. I don't have an image of it, but I believe the 21-inch model will start shipping for about $12.99. And that comes with a 2.7 gigahertz i5 processor, and the 27-inch model goes for $17.99. I believe it's $100 more each than what's currently on the market. Apple also introduced something called Fusion Drive.
I'm stoked on this.
Fascinating. I initially thought it was a hybrid hard drive, which you could buy right now on the market, but it seems to be 2 individual hard drives, and they're rated. It's like RAID on crack, they're calling it. Eric, do you know much about this, about Fusion Drive?
A little bit. I don't know what they're doing, and I don't know whether it's proprietary or secretive, or if a similar thing is being done for the PC side. Those questions I don't know. But what they are saying is, it sounds really cool. Basically, they're taking a 128 gigabyte SSD drive and combining it in software as a single volume with a mechanical hard drive that can be up to 3 terabytes. And according to their, I guess, benchmarks that they publish on their website, you get the same performance for most frequently accessed, for the first 120 gigabytes of your most accessed files and applications and operating system files. They claim you get the performance of an SSD.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like having a 3 terabyte SSD drive, because as you use, the system is constantly watching what files you access the most, and then it moves those off to the SSD, and vice versa for the things that you don't use. And new writes to the disk are written first to the SSD and then moved off. So it seems to be pretty advanced workings under the hood. And if it's, I would like to have a 3 terabyte SSD drive, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. Now, John, what did you think of this? Because we've covered hybrid hard drives in the past, and they offer awful performance. I mean, it's not even worth getting.
Well, I think this is, in a way, something that people have been wanting to do. And in the build your own PC market, a lot of times builders and geeks like us will take an SSD, and then because it's so small, you really can't store, your large music collection if you have a movie collection or anything else. If you do a lot of work like us, where we have a lot of videos, you need that huge amount of storage that you can't necessarily get from an SSD. So having a Fusion or a hybrid drive like this makes a lot of sense, where you have the SSD, but then you also have this area where you can store stuff that you need to actually store and just keep, so that you might not necessarily access it for a long time, but you just need to have a copy of it. And I think the way that they're doing this is really cool. I think Microsoft could actually do something like this. I don't remember the exact names of what they're doing.
I don't know if they
have
can.
some sort of.
I don't think they
I think they can. I do, because they have some sort of virtualization technology where you can actually take partitions of hard drives and kind of combine them into one. They do have that technology in Windows 8.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, in Windows 8 they do. You're absolutely right on that. And by the way, hard drives are not cheap. We talk about how cheap hard drives have gotten over the last couple of years. Yeah, they have, but if you're going for like a lower end, like Western Digital Green hard drive, yeah, it's pretty cheap. But we had to how many hard drives did we get, John? We got four 3 terabyte hard drives, and it was about $700.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking for the enterprise grade stuff, it's not cheap at all.
And of course, the prices doubled back when they had was it the tsunami or the flood?
It was flooding. It was flooding, I believe, in Thailand.
Yeah.
And it totally raised the prices of the hard drives, and it came down a little bit, but not to where they were.
Yeah, it doubled the price overnight, and then it's sort of like reset from there. Like we've seen it decrease, but at the same level that it was way before, just now doubled and starting again. So like the opposite of a stock split.
Yeah, I mean we run out of hard drive space all the time here. We each show, I mean a 2-hour show is almost 10 gigs for us.
We go through probably about 50 gigabytes of video every single week.
I mean, and you may say, well, that's not bad. No, that's a lot. If we're doing every week, we're doing video and audio and editing, and we're trying to.
And that's not all our shows that we do. Like when the Andrew Zarian show returns in January, that's going to add probably another 10 gigabytes
a week.
A week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now you guys aren't
that's a lot of
storing
data.
it. You're not storing it like long-term archiving as uncompressed, are you?
Yeah. Well, we were for a long time, and we just decided it's absolutely we're never going to need access. So what we do, we keep about a year of uncompressed, backlog of our files, and then we slowly take away.
Yeah, you could do anything I archive, I have a relatively high bit rate, just like all the specs specced out in Handbrake. So I get an MP4, and if ever possible, I keep the uncompressed audio, or I do it as lossless or something. And that's pretty good for archiving. I get down to like a gigabyte per show instead of like 30.
Yeah, because what we were doing before, I believe the original file is a 10 megabit WMV.
Yeah,
that's how VidBlaster saves it, and we were actually taking, regardless of what video format we were doing, it was always 10 megabits a second for that video format. But now since we're doing high def, we're doing 720p video, we don't necessarily, and Suncast has over the last couple of years we've kind of refined the way that we do our editing, where the quality, there isn't too much quality loss between the unedited version and what our final version is. So it's really it's not that necessary for us to keep it. Some shows we do. I mean, there's this, I believe, two shows. I believe The Bald Truth, we save all the archive, and I think 2 other shows we save all the original files. But, we have to pull back because you go through the hard drive space. Most people obviously are not going to use it, but an option like this, like a Fusion drive, is a great alternative to buying a 128 gig SSD drive.
Yeah, well, you get both in it.
Yeah.
I've got to give them credit for what they do with the displays on these iMacs. They talk about how every iMac display gets color calibrated before it leaves the factory using 3 spectrometers.
I found that fascinating.
Yeah, and this has been a problem forever for consumer-grade LCD monitors, is that they're notoriously poor for their color accuracy. And of course, if you do any work in Photoshop or Aperture or even iPhoto, which everyone does now, or iMovie, any kind of personal media dealing with photographs and color correction, which is more and more common for the average user, the displays have been very bad for that. And so I think that's awesome that first we saw Apple pioneering the Retina Display technology, doubling the density, and now they're doing basically across the board. I've heard that that the iPads and basically everything they make now has some of the best screens in their for their screen size. Like they always use the best in class screens. I give them credit for that because that's a place where a lot of companies skimp, and it's one of the biggest things that affects user satisfaction, if you ask me.
Now they also updated the Mac Mini. 599 model, dual core i5, 2.5 gigahertz, Ivory Bridge processor, 4 gigs of RAM, 500 gig hard drive. And this is fascinating to me. And there's a second version of it, and they're calling it a server model for $1,000. It's a quad core i7.
Jeez.
But they're calling it a server.
Yeah, that's so they can charge more.
I found that to be interesting that they're calling it a server because they still have the Mac Pros, which they haven't done anything with. There's been no
Right.
updates to the Mac Pros. So is this their way of phasing out the Mac Pro? Is this their way of, putting a $1,000 price tag on this model? They're calling it a server. I found it interesting that they're calling it a server.
They actually did have this before. I think the last year's model had a very similar configuration, so it's not totally new. It's a lot faster than the old one. But I'm confused who their customer for this is, because I've played around with their server application. Server macOS 10, your server used to be like 10 years ago it was like $2,000. Then like 5 years ago it was $500. Now it's $30 on the Mac App Store, and it's just a single application called Server, and it provides some cool features. I used it to do some advanced file sharing to work with Windows computers, control of access control lists, and some features like that. It gives you more access. It gives you a graphical interface to more features than the standard Mac OS 10 would give you. But beyond that, I don't really know who'd be using that. I wouldn't recommend a small business, try to run an email server and a calendar server and everything off of it, because it's just, there are better tools out there for that, and much cheaper.
Now, the big surprise to many, and I'm really surprised how there was so much leaked information about this event, except for this thing. They announced a new iPad, a 4th generation iPad with a new A6X CPU, Lightning connector, and FaceTime HD camera. This was a huge surprise. Nobody expected a new iPad. To me,
and they kind of also glossed right over it.
They did. I mean, they gave no attention to this. They just said, hey, by the way, 4th generation iPad, here are the changes. That's it. Sorry, guys. Same price. To me, this was almost like, hey, we had to do something to put the put the Lightning port adapter on this, the Lightning connector. So rather than just adding it to the 3rd gen, let's just make a new one. People will go buy it anyway, and totally ignore the fact that about 8 months ago, 6 months ago, 7 months ago,
7 months.
We
released. It was only 7 months ago that they came out with the new iPad, the 3rd generation.
Yeah, and so that was interesting. Then they announced the 7.9-inch iPad Mini, 1024 by 768 display, A5 CPU, optional LTE, for starting at $329. This is when it got a little bizarre to me, because they spent about a good 20 minutes comparing this thing to the Nexus 7. And how the Nexus 7 is awful, the quality on that thing is atrocious, and this is so much better. And they compared, our screen size is this much and their screen size is this much. And it almost prepped you for them to say $299, or it's going to be, I was like, wow, they're going to drop the price on this thing. This is going to be really cheap, $249 maybe. And they came out with a $329 price tag. Did you guys almost get tricked into thinking it's going to be a lower price?
No.
You didn't. You knew it was going to be expensive.
No. I was thinking it was going to be at least over $300. I didn't think it was going to be $299. I knew it was going to be in a $300 range, possibly $399, depending on whether or not they did the Retina Display stuff with it, which of course they didn't. And I think that's kind of a detriment, because if you actually look at, the screen resolutions compared to what's out there now in that sort of range, the Nexus 7, the 7-inch Kindle Fire HD, the Nook HD, this display and the resolution is quite pathetic compared to what's out there. If you look at the Nexus 7, which is what they're comparing it to, the Nexus 7 has a 7-inch IPS display with 216 pixels per inch at a 1280 by 800 screen. In comparison, the new iPad Mini, which is a 7.9-inch screen, has an LED backlit IPS 163 pixels per inch screen at 1024 by 768. That is quite a reduction in resolution compared to the Nexus 7. And they made this whole big deal about how the screen is 35% bigger than the Nexus 7. Well, yeah, because it's 0.9 inches bigger. And in a way, because you don't have any sort of Retina display on this thing, it's really a lot lower resolution than what you would get with the Nexus 7. I mean, you're talking about 216 pixels per inches versus 163. That's a lot.
Yeah, Eric, what do you think of this?
In their defense, I read a number of reviews, first impressions by people who were there, and they were saying that the iPad mini screen does seem to be much better color and contrast and consistency and color calibration and all those other things. Basically, everything you can count besides resolution. So there are other things. I agree that it would have been nicer to see a higher density display, but there are other considerations there that make it a nicer screen. And I thought their comparison of the actual viewable surface, the viewable area, like what they show the web pages in the portrait mode, and you get a considerable amount of additional working space. But back to what you guys were saying about price, it does seem like the $299 would have been priced to move, and $329, that extra $30 seems to it almost positions it as a product to bump people up to the higher end iPad.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I kept thinking. Why would I think it's almost like, hey, you go into the store for this, and you're like, for another $150, I could get, the bigger one.
Especially when you start going to the models with cellular.
Yeah. I was just about to say that. It almost seems puzzling then that they would offer a version. I think they have like 16, 32, and 64 gigabytes, which is the biggest thing that drives up the price. And then to get involved in a 4G or 3G contract for the life of this product, I mean, you're talking a big expense. And like we've said before, when you do the math and you figure if you're going to have a cellular wireless contract for a phone or a tablet or any device, you're going to pay like $2,000 or more for the device over the life of that contract. You may as well spend the extra $50 or $150 or even $200 up front to have a much better device with which to use that $30 or $40 a month data plan for those next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. So this is when things got a little weird for me, because now they started showing, okay, well, here's our lineup of iPads, okay? So you have the iPad mini, and they show the pricing. They showed the iPad 2 and its pricing, and the new iPad. The iPad 3 is gone. Totally gone. You can't buy it. So
erased from history.
Erased, gone. I initially thought what they're going to do.
For all you people that bought an iPad 3 7 months ago.
I know. It's awful.
And the iPad 2 is back into full production. Isn't that bizarre?
That is bizarre. What I think they're doing is, I initially thought they're going to do, okay, well, if you go to buy an iPad, you could buy $100 for $100 cheaper. You could buy the one generation prior. So you'll have, whatever it is, like the iPad 3 will be $399, the new one will be $499. So they could still sell them. No, that's not what it is. They're actually changing the entire lineup of Apple products, so you can have Retina and non-Retina now. Yeah. I would not be surprised with the next iPad. They have an updated version of the iPad 2, whatever they're going to call it, and they're just going to call it iPad Retina and iPad whatever.
I have a feeling that they're going to phase out the iPad 2 as soon as they sell out of them. It's very puzzling why the iPad 2 is still there.
The iPad 3 is not.
From a marketing perspective, it's bizarre that they would call it iPad mini, iPad 2, and just iPad. Why would you have a 2 there when you're already on the 3rd or 4th generation of the other one? Why would you still sell the 2? When you look at their specs page, comparing the page comparing the 3 models on Apple.com, it's very confusing why anyone would buy an iPad 2, because for less money, you get basically the same product, but with extra amenities that the iPad mini has that the 2 doesn't. So I wonder, that's my first point. The second point is, usually they have a lot of videos and marketing speak and case examples, like a case study example of who their market is for a product like this. And in this case, I am having a hard time understanding who's going to be their market for this smaller yet expensive, yet slower, yet lower resolution iPad. If it's going to be popular for kids, like in kindergarten classrooms, they certainly didn't say it. They didn't say, we've asked our customers what they want, and they said we want it smaller, but just as high a price. I mean, I wonder who's going to buy these things.
I mean, I initially thought they were going to push the entire conference would be about this, the entire keynote, and they would push education and, their bookstore. They would push it as an ebook. And that wasn't the case. But another thing, they did not concentrate on gaming. They didn't talk about apps with this thing. They spoke about specs. So I don't know who the device, or maybe this is just a retaliation to all the 7-inch tablets on the market that they feel are taking away sales from Apple.
So I've got a couple of predictions of what'll happen. First of all, I think the iPad 2 will stop being sold when they run out of those. I think at that point we'll see it'll make more sense because they'll reposition the iPad product line to be the mini for less price or the regular size for the regular price.
I agree with that.
Yeah, and then the price actually may come down if you think about it. This could just be an introductory price, just kind of to see what they can get away with, because you can never raise the price again later. You can only bring it down. People have done studies and found that Apple probably makes about a 30% profit margin on the iPad. So if they have the same margin on this mini, they have some room. They have some wiggle room there. They could lower the price if they have to compete with the other tablets. But I think that right now they just want to see how the market will respond at this price.
Now, let me ask you guys this. The pricing structure is a little bizarre. For $329, you could get the 7.9-inch iPad mini. And for $299, you could buy an iPod Touch. That is what baffles me. And what really, in my opinion, what really screwed up the pricing structure for this device is the fact that you don't have an entry model 16-gig iPod Touch anymore. You have the older one. There's no 16-gig iPod Touch. 32 gig starting at $299. I don't understand that. I don't understand why they did that.
Well, I think it's pretty easy to understand. It's just it's what's hard to understand is how they're ever going to get away from that model, because it's based on the subsidy. So a 30% profit margin on the iPads and probably the iPod Touch and anything that they sell just directly themselves. But when you add the subsidy in, that's where the cash flow comes. I mean, I almost made the joke earlier on when we were saying how they devoted, they crammed all these product announcements into a single announcement, whereas, a few weeks ago it was the whole announcement for just the iPhone. Well, if you look at it, that's actually where their revenue is coming from. I think it's at least 50% now iPhone, and it's because of those sweet subsidies that they get from the carrier. You may think you're buying a phone for $299, but AT&T is buying it for $800 and giving them the rest of that, and that's how they can get a insanely larger profit margin on those contracted phones than on any other product in their product line.
Yeah, I mean, John. By the way, I know I had a chance to play around with an iPod Touch, the new one. It's a beautiful device. I mean, it is stunningly nice. I mean, the display is phenomenal. So I think the device is a good device, but I think the pricing structure is a little whacked out now. For $29 more, $30 more, you could get a tablet.
But then some people make the argument that, then you can't really put it in your pocket.
I guess. I don't know. But
I think that's just kind of silly. I mean, the price point versus the size of the screen just doesn't compute logically in my mind.
It'd be interesting to get a hold of their actual sales figures and their production figures, because I think it is possible that some of these products exist just to bump you up to the higher end product. I think they don't want anybody to buy an iPod Touch. They want them to buy an iPhone because they get the much bigger subsidy and they get the carrier lock-in.
Will the iPad mini take away sales from the iPad?
Would it matter?
I mean, you're talking about a good, I guess. I mean, that's a big jump. $329 to $499.
Well, it's a much slower CPU, and it's a presumably much cheaper screen. I think it could, if they kept the same profit margin and they still make all their money off of the software purchases and anything that is done in the App Store, it's probably a decent business they're making off it, or will.
Yeah, it's interesting. So many devices, and I attribute this to the Apple beyond Steve Jobs. If Steve Jobs was still around, would there be an iPad mini? Would we see this sporadic pricing structure? What would be the layout currently? I mean, these are the questions that we're going to be asking for a while.
I mean, you're never going to know, though.
You'll never know. Exactly. Who knows? I do want to cover one more story, and then we could go into our picks of the week. CEA officially brands 4K as Ultra HD. I don't know if you guys saw this
This is
story.
terrible.
This is terrible, actually, because you're already seeing 8K devices out on the market, and they're going to be coming out soon. So what is Ultra and what's not Ultra? I believe Ultra, Eric, correct me if I'm wrong, the resolution is 3840 by 2160. Right?
Yeah, that's what's in the notes here.
That's the Ultra resolution.
Which is stupid, because they took a functional descriptive name 4K and turned it into a meaningless jargon.
It means
Ultra
nothing.
HD. Ultra could mean anything. Everything in the world is called ultra. Besides just adding an adjective to HD. HD is that word means, either 720, either 1280 by 720 or 1920 by 1080. That's what HD means. One of those two resolutions. To say ultra, I mean, people have used that phrase or similar phrases to describe 24-bit color or 3D or any kind of augmentation to HD. To just add that adjective says nothing of the fact that it's a cinema quality 4 times the pixels. That's a stupid name.
Now, the other thing is what they're going to be doing. Some of these devices, some of these manufacturers are planning to call their product 4K UHD. So then we'll have, 4K UHD. So when 8K comes out, it's 8K UHD.
That's confusing.
But there's also something called 2K.
Yeah.
So,
what's the Japanese name for it? It's like super high vision?
Super high, I think it's super high vision. Yeah, something like that. Yeah. And there's also super high definition. So this is fascinating. I mean,
it's all marketing crap.
It's all marketing crap. But how,
it's
first of
the
all,
same thing as 4G and 4G, where you have HSPA plus markets that are being called 4G when it's not at all LTE.
Or just like with desktop monitors, like is anyone actually aware of whether they're running a WUXGA plus double Y? They have all these names, but everyone just calls it by the resolution. No one knows these names. If you ever look up the chart on Wikipedia, they've got these names with like 16 letters long to describe what size of monitor you're using, which no one uses those names ever.
Now CES, people are saying that this year, it's going to be all about 4K displays. That's going to be the big thing. So we're probably a good 4 years away from these becoming the selling device of that season. Just like the whole HD push of a couple of years ago, we're going to start seeing these in a couple of years. I don't even know why you would get it. The cable companies have not even adapted high-definition channels to majority of their markets. A lot of channels are still missing. There's a lot of red tape to go through, and the high definition channels, some of them are so compressed some of them are so compressed where it's barely high definition.
Yep. I think if you combine this with Nintendo's, they had some very, very bad announcement recently about the 3DS that I think they slashed the price. The 3DS is not doing anywhere near as well as they thought it would. And now we see CES and the CEA talking about everything's 4K. I think the industry is sort of turning its back on 3D already.
Yeah, I think 3D was a gimmick. I mean, it always is, and I said it from day one. I have zero interest in the 3D TV. If my TV comes with it, that's great.
It's never
but
taken off. I mean,
we've been trying.
It's a novelty at this point still.
I mean, we've been trying 3D for 50 years.
2-3 years.
No, 50 years we've been doing 3D.
3D TVs in TVs.
I mean, we've been talking about. We have this obsession with 3D, and the reality is nobody really wants it. Nobody wants to sit there in front of their television with glasses. And I've had a chance to play around with these the 3D TVs that don't require glasses.
They're passive.
No, there's no glasses needed. I forgot how they do it. I had a whole tutorial on this thing. I went to a video company and they were showing this 3D TV that they had. It looks awful. I mean, the quality is awful. There's nobody, and I sat down, they go, we're planning on selling these, their whole thing is that they came up with technology, they patented it, and they want the big guys to use it. And I said, nobody wants to do this. This looks awful. And they looked at me like I had 10 heads, like nobody's ever said that. I'm like, nobody will watch this thing. You're taking really good television and you're making it really crappy because it comes out this far.
Yeah, you're making it blurry and low contrast and hard on the eyes. It's a bad way to go.
But I think this is a major problem now because what are you going to use a 4K UHD TV? What are you going to watch on it?
YouTube.
I guess.
I mean, that's literally the only thing you can see in 4K. I mean, and interestingly, YouTube has allowed 4K uploads now for I think at least a year.
But the reality is most people don't have the bandwidth, so it's going to be an optical device. So Blu-ray's gone, and what's going to be the new standard? So now it's a whole new war again as far as 4K devices. I really don't think people are going to be able to do it on the internet, right? We could barely do 1080p right now.
I wonder if they'll come up with some kind of way to turn the 3D Blu-rays into 4K, because they can already interleave the two 2K images to form 3D. I wonder if they can just use the same disc and then do that same method to have the 4K.
What kind of disc are they using for it?
For 3D?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's probably something that just is not backwards compatible, or they give you like two in the same package or something.
Yeah, really interesting. But it's time for our picks of the week, guys. Every week we go through a product, a website, or whatever comes to mind that we like. Who wants to go first this week?
I'll go because I got a fast and simple one.
Eric goes first this week.
Okay, and you've actually, as I say this, you've only got, let's see, I'm hitting refresh right now. What the? 3 days left? That's not right. A minute ago, when I hit refresh, it said 6 hours left. How do we get 3 more days? What?
That's funny.
All right. I'm very confused about this. A minute ago, it was 3 days, or 6 hours. Now it's 3 days. But anyway, Mac Heist. You're probably already familiar with it. It's been around for a couple of years now. I think they do it only once or twice a year with Mac Heist, and the Mac Update does a similar bundle of Mac shareware and independent apps and small apps, and they bundle them together, and you get them for an amazing price. I think we can see from this bundle that
oh no, I'm so upset right now. I'm so upset. I just bought TuneUp for $50 and they're adding it into this thing.
Wait, what's TuneUp? I'm not seeing.
That's what you picked last week.
That was my pick last week.
Oh man,
I paid $50.
Yeah, they've done this to me before with these Mac Heist bundles. So yeah, $29 gets you about $800 worth of software, and I see fewer standout products here in the list than in the past, and I wonder if that's because the Mac App Store is kind of taking away some relevancy of these shareware bundles. But it's a good deal if you need some of the stuff in here. Printopia, print from any iOS device. Disk Tools Pro, you can defragment without rebooting into a separate disk, which is big on the Mac. And TuneUp, like you said, that was just added, and I guess that's a really big one. And a couple of games there, BioShock 2 and Braid and some others, Bejeweled 3. So you'll probably find something to like here. So MacHeist.com, $30, and either 5 hours or 3 days remaining. We don't know which.
I'm so upset that I bought a full price and I didn't get all these apps. All right, Suncast, what's your pick?
All right, so a lot of people ask me and Andrew, how do you do these podcasts? Or what's a good way to record audio from Skype? How do we do our own podcast and record the audio on Skype? And there's so many different ways to do this. And when you're just starting out, some of the ways that we do things don't necessarily are great for what people are starting out trying to do, because it's so much more complicated doing what we do when you're just trying to start out and just basically record whatever audio you have on Skype. Well, there's an application. It's called Frozen Skype REC. That's with a PH instead of an F. And what this does is it actually integrates into Skype and allows you to record your audio on Skype. So if you want to start out doing podcasts and you're looking for a way to record your audio on Skype with somebody else so that you can do a podcast, this is a great and easy way to do this. It integrates, like I said, very easy. It'll just come up with after you install it, a dialog that asks you to allow access to it in Skype, and then you'll have full access to it. When you record it, it'll actually record as a WAV file, which is really great if you're doing podcasting, because then you have your full high-quality audio file. And if you want later down the road, you can change that down to a 64 kilobyte MP3 that you can upload to the web, so that you always have that full resolution copy to always go back to. Because when you're editing, you don't necessarily want to have lossless audio. It'll just sound better in the end. And then after you record something, it'll actually have a dialogue where you can actually see what you've recorded. It'll tell you when you've recorded, who you've recorded with, the size of the file, and where it's actually located, which is really cool. It's got some settings so that you can actually change where your audio is actually saved to. So if you don't want it saved necessarily in the default location, but you have a specific folder or a hard drive that you want to save your audio to, especially since it records WAV files, you might want to put it on a larger hard drive. It's got an easy way to do that as well. Just click the settings button and change the folder location. It's a pretty cool program. It's called Frozen Skype REC. I'm not sure if you're supposed to pronounce that or not.
Record? Rec?
record.
Yeah, I guess
REC.
frozen Skype record, I guess.
Yep.
Very cool. Very, very cool. My pick this week, guys, it's not software. It's actually a microphone. Everybody's talking about cheap mics. What can you get? What's good? I get asked this all the time, and we recommended the ATR 2100 a couple of months ago on the show. It's a mic just like this. It's actually identical to this. This is the AT2005 by Audio-Technica. It is the Pro version of the ATR 2100. Now, the only real big difference is the pop filter. People claim that it's better. Now, this is a dynamic mic. I bought it for $50 on Amazon, and I'm gonna test it right now. It's a great mic. It's both XLR and USB. You could also pop in a headphone in this thing and monitor everything going through it. So you could hear yourself. It kind of eliminates the purpose of a mixer if you just have a laptop. But I'm going to hook it up now, and I'm going to see if you guys what you guys think of the audio. Now, I am behind a gate. I'm behind a compressor and a gate, so it's a little skewed, my version, but I could turn it off too. So here we go.
I can't wait to hear this. It sounds incredibly versatile for $50.
There we go. Hello, hello. All right, so I have to put the volume up on the mic, but this is what it sounds like. And obviously, I haven't played around with the settings on my board, but it's a $50 microphone. And I think it sounds great for what it is. I actually think that this sounds better than some of the mics I have in my studio right now.
It sounds very good. I heard a couple of breath pops, but you can put a pop filter over it. But
yeah, I would have to put a pop filter on this thing, but if
for the price and what you get out of it.
Yeah, I mean it sounds equivalent to
there's a pop filter.
All
right. So I just put a pop filter on this thing, and you don't hear any popping. It sounds. I'm really impressed by this microphone. It was $49.
Wow.
When I got it, I haven't tuned it. Obviously, let me turn off the gate. See if that makes a difference. Yeah, I mean you hear the hollowness of the room a little bit. It actually sounds better with the gate off, with the compression off. So that's interesting. But
you got a little bit of mid-range back.
Yeah, I got mid, and this kind of kills the mid. I guess I got to play around with the settings, but it's a phenomenal mic, and I have to tell you, the build quality on this thing is unbelievable. It feels like a sturdy, heavy microphone. I mean, it feels like a pro-level mic.
And I love that if you plug in headphones to it, you can hear yourself. You can monitor yourself live.
I can monitor myself live. Yeah,
that's great. I mean, that used to be a feature that you get with like one of those blue mics, like it's sitting over your shoulder, which were way more expensive.
Sure, $50. It's the AT2005 USB by Audio-Technica. You could go via USB mode or XLR. I tried both, and I kind of feel that it sounds better on XLR, but that could also be a placebo effect. Most people probably wouldn't even know the difference, but I think this is a superb microphone for anybody getting into podcasting, or they just want something good for Skype. This is the one to get. For $50, you can't go wrong. I know Blue makes a couple of microphones like the Yeti. Samson makes a couple of these mics. I think this is much better than what anybody else is putting on the market. Audio-Technica AT2005 is the mic. And that's my pick of the week. Let me try to go back to my old microphone. What do you guys think of that? So you like it, Eric, huh?
Yeah. I mean, it sounds great so far. And for that, you get quite a lot of versatility.
All right, there we go. Yeah, I mean, this is a condenser mic, what I'm on right now. And this is a dynamic mic. And it's a phenomenal microphone. I mean, I'm really impressed by it. I didn't think it would be this good when I got it. And that's it, guys. That was my pick. Suncast, any plugs before we wrap up?
You can check out my music blog website, Amadeus.com. That's spelled AMADAIS.com. And that's where I like to go on YouTube. I find artists that do covers of songs, but they're not necessarily like mainstream artists. They're just people that have great voices. They put their videos on YouTube. I find them, and I aggregate them all onto my website for you. I got a song on there from Terra Bright right now. Awesome band. They do like punk rock covers of popular songs out there. So like they did a Taylor Swift song, even though she's country, they made it punk rock, which is kind of cool. So if you want to check that out, you can go to Amadeus.com, AMADAIS.com.
And Eric, where can people go to get more information about what you're doing, what you're up to?
They can go to my Twitter, twitter.com/Eric Lanigan, and of course, ericlanigan.com, ERIKLANIGAN.
And that's it, guys. If you miss any portion of the show, of course, you can go to our website, gfqnetwork.com, and catch the archived version of it. We have it in video and audio form. You can subscribe to us. We're on iTunes. We're on, I was going to say Zune, but I guess we're still on Zune. Technically. Somewhere in the air. We're still hanging in there. And everywhere else that podcasts are available. You can listen live on Stitcher Radio. And like I said, on our website, gfqnetwork.com. Until next time, guys, see you later. And I don't know. I have nothing to say. Good night.